This video is brought to you by Sticker Mule. On the surface, Penn State and Iowa winning the Collegiate Wrestling Duals may not have seemed like a big deal, but it was not a cakewalk. Both teams were definitely challenged on each day, although they eventually did take home the titles at the event. So what did you miss from the Collegiate Wrestling Duals? Let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's going on, wrestling fans? My name is Josiah, and welcome to Fanco Wrestling, your source for college wrestling news and discussion. And one of the biggest events of the year, honestly, probably my favorite event of the year because of the duels. There's so much action that happens in duels that just, excite me. So many upsets, so many implications that will affect the upcoming rest of the year happened at this event, which made me so excited. And before we get into the best duels from day one, I want to ask you to hit that like button if you thought Jaden Eierman was pinned in the match against NC State. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, we'll get to that. Trust me. But let's talk about the best matchups from day one. That's the first thing I want to get into. So NC State, they came to play, and that was obvious by day two, but in day one, man, they had a great day too. First up, they had Binghamton, and they beat them pretty good. But Binghamton did have a little bit of surprise. They sent out Ryan Anderson, who initially was committed to Iowa State, then went to wrestle for a D2, D3 school, and ended up coming out. And for the most part, all teams wrestled their best lineups, which to me was exciting because I wasn't sure if we were going to get Spencer Lee or Michael Kemmer. We didn't get Kemmer, if both teams or all teams were going to bring their best guys, and they did, which I did like. We didn't see Bryce Andonian. That could have been something else going on, but for the most part, everybody brought their best guys. Now, a good showing for NC State against Mizzou, who were 9-9 going into 174 pounds, and this was a duel I really predicted was going to come down to the wire, and it sure did. Into 174, one of the Hiley brothers was going to have to get bonus if they wanted to win the match against Mizzou, and Trent did. Trent ended up getting a major decision at 184 pounds, and then Trumbull, who I've been saying to watch out for him, ended up beating Elam, the number 4 guy in the country, to advance to the Day 2 finals was NC State. The next thing that happened in day one was Arizona State rolling through Virginia Tech. And honestly, a bit surprising that they rolled through them this much. It was 23-13. I thought it'd be a little bit closer. And this kind of made me nervous at first for Penn State on day two. Was Penn State going to be able to stand up to Arizona State's just tough lineup? They won the first 6 matches against Virginia Tech, were up 19-0 until Mackay and Bolin came up and ended up getting some points for Virginia Tech. Mikhail McGee defeated Corbin Myers early on. That was a pretty big upset for them as well. And then Bolin is a guy, getting back to him, he's been out of the conversation for a little bit, and I just want to bring him kind of back into that conversation because he's a really tough wrestler and was one of the top seeds at the national championships just a couple of years ago, and I think he could really get back up to the top and really bounce back in if he gets on a roll. As far as Iowa's performance, they shut out Central Michigan. I actually called that. I thought they would beat them 40-0. They ended up beating them 44-0. And then they beat up Lehigh pretty good as well. But as far as Lehigh, Josh Humphreys of Lehigh had a phenomenal couple days of wrestling, and he really was somebody who impressed me. I knew he was good, but just seeing the level of competition he was going up against, he had 2 majors in a fall. He majored Caleb Young of Iowa. Not the best event for Caleb Young, unfortunately, of Iowa, but man, Josh Humphreys, look out for him at 157 pounds. And then we get into Cornell and Penn State. Did you watch that match on the first night? This was I want to call it a little bit past prime time event because I think it was on at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I was still sitting in front of my iPad watching it, and I absolutely had a thrill watching it. And I was a little bit nervous because Penn State looked okay in their first match, while Cornell was just absolutely dominant, has been dominant for the majority of the season. We found out that Vito Arujau dropped down to 125 pounds, was wrestling 133. We weren't sure where he was going to go. Made the official announcement on Twitter that he's going 125. So look out, everybody else at the weight. He started the duel with a fall, and that made me a little bit nervous. Now, RBY and Yanni majored, Nick Lee majored, and then Yanni actually got a major as well for Cornell. And then Cornell won 2 more by decision, Yapuzin and Ramirez. Those are some strong weights for Cornell, honestly. Penn State ended up pulling it back together up top. They were down relatively big, but then Srirachi, Brooks, Dean, and Kirkfleet ended up rebounding, coming back, and they pulled it off for Penn State, but just barely, because the match with Srirachi and Foca came down to the 3rd period. Now, luckily, Srirachi was able to ride out Foca, and I know that this is a common problem with a lot of freshmen, but if you want to be elite, you got to be able to find a way off bottom somehow against those top guys, or just not choose bottom against them, right? Maybe if he wrestles Srirachi again, he's not choosing bottom, because Srirachi ended up getting that riding time in beating him in the match. Cardenas also, as well, at 197, ended up challenging Max Dean at the weight. Dean ended up winning 4-2, but man, Cornell and Penn State was a duel, and it was an unbelievable event, honestly, put on by Journeyman, and they couldn't have done it without Frank Popolicio running the event, and Martin Floriani did a really good job, and they couldn't have done it, I know, as well, without the sponsors of the event. And one of the sponsors of the event was actually Sticker Mule, who's also a sponsor of Fanco Wrestling. So let's head over to the whiteboard so I can tell you a bit more about them. Sticker Mule is offering wrestling fans a very special offer of 10 stickers for $1. Between you and me, there's absolutely no comparison between Sticker Mule and any of their opponents. That's why I keep going back to Sticker Mule for my stickers, my magnets, my shirts, even their mule sauce. They keep on winning because their stickers are durable, they're weatherproof, and they're cut to your specifications. They're going to work with you and make sure that you get the product you want for your headgear, for your laptop, for your business, whatever you're using their products for. If I have a bold prediction about your order, it's that you're going to be blown away. You can get your special offer down in the description below. 10 stickers for $1 only at Sticker Mule. Now let's get back to the video. Thanks again to Sticker Mule for sponsoring Fanco Wrestling. And let's move on to the Day 2 recap, because Central Michigan and Northern Iowa both took 5th place in their respective pools. And Day 2 was just a crazy day of wrestling. If you need a reminder, there were 2 pools. There was the red pool and the blue pool, and each of them wrestled 1st through 6th, but they did not overlap. The other teams that ended up placing 3rd, Cornell took 3rd in their pool, Mizzou took 3rd in their pool. But one of the better matches leading into the big matchups between Iowa and NC State and Penn State and Arizona State was actually Cornell and Virginia Tech. Now Cornell won that match 18-15, but man, was it close, and I was expecting it to be close. One of the big marquee matchups was between Mekhi Lewis and Chris Foca at 174 pounds, which went to tiebreakers. Now Foca in the tiebreakers ended up choosing, it looked like he chose bottom, but ended up getting put on top. It was kind of weird, but he was on top, and he wasn't able to ride Mekhi out, so Mekhi escaped. Mekhi, whenever it was his turn to choose, he chose bottom, escaped again, won the match 3-1. I mean, there were like tiny little, I don't know if it was mistakes there by Foca against like Srirachi and Mekhi, but you still look out for him by the time the postseason comes, because he's learning from these mistakes for sure. Jonathan Lowe as well from Cornell at 184 ended up upsetting Hunter Bolin. I know I said to look out for Bolin, but these Cornell guys are kind of like, they weren't in the forefront last year because they didn't wrestle, but they are here to party. They are here to wrestle. And let's get into the championship matches, because Iowa did actually wrestle Spencer Lee. I mentioned this already. They wrestled their best guys, but it wasn't Spencer Lee. Like, it didn't look like the Spencer Lee that we all know, that's out there teching guys, putting up crazy points on the board, and it's looking like those knees could be bothering him, and guys are like figuring out the knees a little bit and what they need to do against him to kind of gain an advantage. He wasn't necessarily out there like tilting guys up and doing all the crazy Spencer Lee stuff. He had a tech, a major, and then a decision against Camacho. Then we moved into the next match at 133 with DeSanto, and he came out with a major decision against Oren, but I honestly expected him to get a tech. So I expected Iowa to be up 11-0. They were only up 7-0 heading into 141, and this is the match that we have to talk about, because Jaden Eierman and Ryan Jack. Now, Eierman's had a target on his back for a little while, being one of the top seniors, one of the top wrestlers at 141, being in the NCAA for so long. And he had some tough matches before this. I mean, just going up against Dresden Simon of Central Michigan, he got tilted up in the first period, was down 11-2, ended up mounting a comeback, winning 13-12. The guys got grit, right? And then he ended up getting a close decision to McGonigal of Lehigh, 8-3. But then the Jack match, he started out in, I mean, they were in some crazy scrambles, like some of the craziest scrambles I've seen. And Jack ended up getting the better of Eierman. He was up by 2 takedowns. He got 2 takedowns on Eierman in the first period. It was up 4-2. In the second, he ended up getting an escape, which was impressive considering how tough Eierman is on top. Was up 5-2 heading into the third, and that's when Eierman really started mounting a comeback. He started getting a couple takedowns, pressuring Jack, and ended up getting. I mean, it was close, right? It was a close score, 7-6. He ends up going up towards the end, and this is where we get into the crazy situation as I share my screen with you, because let's watch this. So Eierman is on top here, and this is directly from Rockfin. I have it linked up down in the description below. Eierman's on top here. There are 10 seconds left. He turns over Jack, but man, look, Eierman is in a defensive pin position. Does he look like he's pinned there? I'll tell you what, right there. What's that? That looks like a pin to me. That looks like a pin to me. Now, Jack is bridging hard, but the time runs out. The ref does not call the match, and it's over. And Jack does not get the pin. He was stuck, but there was no call. And this was a game changer. If NC State would have got this pin, it literally would have changed the duel. It would have changed the outcome. I cannot believe that the ref did not call this. Like I said, all the respect to Jaden Eierman, who has fought back from being down in multiple matches the weekend. And this is no fault to like Iowa or Eierman. It's just that was a pin that was not called. So NC State's got to find a way back in, right? They're down. They still need to find a way to win. Well, who comes up next? Wilson has a tough match with Siebrecht. Siebrecht gave him a tough match. He's an Iowa Hawkeye. Is going to battle you hard. Then Ed Scott came in fire and ended up getting a pin over Caleb Young in a headlock in the first period. Like right around the first minute mark, he came out and blew my mind. I mean, blew everybody's mind. NC State was right back in the game. And just like Siebrecht, Donald Cates, of NC State wrestled Marinelli tough. So the thing with these elite teams like NC State, like Iowa, like Penn State, is you got to have these guys who maybe they're not like top 10 wrestlers, but they're still going to battle those other top 10 wrestlers to just a decision rather than getting pinned or tacked. And that's what's impressive about some of these guys. Then the Brothers of Destruction come out, Hayden and Trent Hidley. They needed bonus points but didn't get it. I was expecting maybe Kember to get sent out here from Iowa. Didn't happen. They sent out Brands against Hayden, and then they sent out Assad against Trent. It was down to Trumbull, 197 pounds. And I called before that this was going to be an upset, and it almost was. It was so close to being an upset. 1-1 heading into the third. Then Trumbull kind of took a bad shot, and Warner took advantage of that. 3-2 in the end. And man, wow, they weren't going to beat Cassiope, although it was an exciting, close match at the end. Just weren't able to put it off. Iowa won that duel. They won a close duel there. But next up was Penn State, and it's like you come off this crazy high after that duel. I was screaming at my iPad. I was yelling. I was so excited. It was nuts from both teams. Then we get into Penn State and Arizona State. Now, if Courtney started off this duel, Brandon Courtney had a pin, I was getting a bit nervous. He didn't. He started out with a major, but he majored Jack Campbell of Penn State. Now, Mikhail McGee gave RBY a pretty good match. This is a matchup with 2 All-Americans, and it was good. You know, it was a solid match for RBY. Then Nick Lee came in against Jesse Vasquez, and he was having a pretty good year so far, Vasquez was, but Nick Lee kind of ate him up. And the only reason I'm saying this, right, is because like he's a freshman, he's a young guy, and you see kind of these mistakes that, you know, he's doing well against a lot of these other competition, but Nick Lee, a guy like Nick Lee who's just going to score a crazy bonus, is going to do that. In the third, Penn State was actually calling for stalling on Vasquez because he kept backing up while Nick Lee was shooting. They were calling 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shot, 4 shot. As a Penn State fan, I thought it was a little bit funny. You see these kind of things that happen in Rec Hall. Looks like fans traveled down to Florida, which was awesome, but maybe you were upset by that. I'd love to know what you have to think about that. But then came a big upset for Bo Bartlett, who defeated Arizona State's Kyle Parko in overtime. What a match for Bo. A little, not like crazy offensive for Bartlett, but he did still get the job done. And if Penn State wants to compete for a title, they got to have guys like Bartlett find a way onto the stand. And by beating an All-American, that's a really good start for him. Now, Arizona State kind of hit their sweet spot with Teamer and Valencia. And Valencia, I actually didn't even mention this, Anthony Valencia at 165, just made the Mexican national team, wrestled the Mexican nationals just like a couple days before this event, flew right in and wrestled for his team. Just a lot of respect for him for doing that and coming out for his team. But guys from Penn State, Negron and Edsel at 157 and 165, they fought to hard decisions. Like I said, they're going to... If you want to be elite, you got to have these guys fighting until the end, and they sure earned my respect there. Penn State got back into big bonus territory here with Srirachi with the tech, Brooks with the fall, Dean with the major. I thought Kirkfleet was going to have a great match against Colton Schultz, and guess what? Arizona State didn't send out Schultz. They sent out their backup, which I was a little bit upset by, and then I was a little bit even more upset because I thought this match was just going to be over quick, and then Kirkfleet started bleeding out of his face like crazy, and it was like such a long match. But anyway, Kirkfleet ended up coming out and getting a major decision, 9-0, and Penn State ended up winning the duel 29-10, which to me honestly was pretty impressive. I didn't expect them to win by that big of a margin. I thought it'd be a little bit closer, which just sets up the upcoming duel for Iowa versus Penn State on January 28th. It's going to be the true decider between who's the red pool versus blue pool champ for the collegiate duels, and I'm super excited for it. I'll be talking lots about that duel in the upcoming weeks. Make sure if you're not already to hit subscribe to Fanco Wrestling, and I'll talk to you soon.